This is called Save the Stress. It's a campaign that we ran in the Fredericksburg area. And when you take a look at it, there's certainly the core market right here around Richmond, the city of, and the counties around. But there are some important peripheral markets for us as well. And Fredericksburg is one of them. There's 100,000 originating passengers out of Fredericksburg a year. There's no airport in Fredericksburg, so everybody that's flying is getting in a car, hopefully bought from CarMax at Fredericksburg location, enjoying the scenery in Virginia. Is it going north or south? But the whole thing was to encourage them to go south on I-95.
Hey guys, have you ever tried to fly out of DC or Baltimore? Traffic is like a drive-in movie without the movie. Seriously, I was on the highway so long I had to pull over and make a car payment. Changing lanes, it's easier to change countries. Seriously, folks, why do you go north? Richmond International Airport has tons of direct flights and it's so convenient, you actually feel like you're flying on the way to the airport. No, I was being serious. Now get out of here, you're fired.
And we were very careful not to point out any issues at the airports themselves, but we focused on the issue of I-95. It's not very predictable heading north. You, of course, can run into a lot of traffic. Heading south, it's, put it this way, your percentage of getting there on time and a lot less stress is much higher.
Everything that we do at BTC is based on really careful research. One of our big drivers is culinary, and most of our marketing campaigns have months and months of research behind it. The one I'm about to tell you about had none. So I was watching the Today Show one morning getting ready for work in April 2015 and saw that the Today Show was pairing up with Sorted Food, which is a UK-based YouTube cooking channel. They have 1.2 million subscribers and 125 million views on their channel. And they were teaming up to do a culinary road trip across America. And they started in LA, and the rest of their road trip was based on social media, people using the hashtag #BostonHungry. So we had the opportunity to invite them here to Virginia, and we launched a massive campaign with all of our tourism partners across the state, the wineries, the breweries, the restaurants, the hotels. Everyone was telling them why they needed to come to Virginia. We had probably about 250 tweets going out from our industry partners, and then finally, in mid-May, we saw Sorted Food posted a collage of all of the tweets that we had put out and said, it sounds like something's telling us to come to Virginia. So they came, we worked with them, and we planned a culinary road trip across Virginia, starting in Richmond, then they worked their way over to the eastern shore of Virginia, then over to Charlottesville, and finally up to Loudoun County. Last time I checked for the total number of YouTube views from those, we had about 400,000 views just from that campaign alone. We got a nice shout out on the Today Show for it, and it's actually changed completely how our marketing team is doing marketing now, because we have viewed this as PR. It's earned, it's owned, it's paid, and we have kind of decided that a lot of our marketing strategy going forward is going to be working with bloggers and influencers, because they are creating their own content that we can use and share. They're a voice for us on social media that's increasing our share of voice, and it creates this partnership.
So the campaign I worked on this year was actually the second year that we did it. It was called the CarMax Used Car Shopping Report. It was a way for us to really look at the CarMax offer and determine what's the unique information and data that we have to provide that nobody else in the industry actually does. And as the nation's largest retailer of used vehicles, we have 151 stores around the country. We sell 600,000 cars a year, 5 million over the course of the company's existence over 23 years. We have this incredible internal data about what people are actually purchasing. So to be able to go into the automotive industry and say, we have this data which nobody else does, and we can show these trends in the used car industry that people are purchasing, what cars they're purchasing, at what seasons, in certain geographical areas, and really display that in a visually appealing way. And so we took that kind of internal data and partnered with an external third party to do a survey, and really looked at some of the more fun questions that we could use as kind of to dangle in front of some of the media that we were targeting. And they were like, what would the if you could have one technological advancement for your car, what would it be? And it came away that it was like a self-cleaning car. And, so looking at what opportunities we could partner third-party data and external data with our internal data to provide a real complete integrated marketing campaign. So we came away with a USA Today snapshot and a number of other national placements, which was really our target as a national retailer. We're moving more away from targeting local media and really looking at what our national opportunities are for coverage. We're very specific upfront in the planning part of any project that we put in place to get internal buy-in, whether it's funding or partners internally to provide us with the information. It's really important that we just we outline what the actual goals are so that we can have internal understanding that our partners can provide us with the best information. So we knew exactly what, we had our media list with which outlets we were going to be targeting. We also had to have a very clear understanding of what we wanted our visuals to look like. So that was the goal, and the number of placements, we were kind of brainstorming before this, what from a PR perspective, the trends that the industry are going towards. For us, it's away from impressions and more towards placements, because there's this very intangible way of measuring PR. But for us, with this campaign, we actually built an internal platform as well. One of the issues you run into with content a lot of time is, where does it live? What's going to host your content? And so for us, we wanted to show the real return on investment by driving traffic to the actual CarMax website. And so we built an internal page on our blog that we could really measure the number of visits that we drove to the actual website. Unfortunately, we couldn't measure that into direct sales, which is always the problem. But we could measure that in terms of traffic, which was really important to us as well.
Our goal was kind of immediate and not really all that planned. It was just to get them here. But I think the campaign was a microcosm of our greater overall marketing strategy, which is for us to identify Virginia as a culinary destination. For decades, people think about Virginia peanuts and Virginia ham. They don't think about wine or craft beer. And actually in 2013, we launched a culinary marketing campaign. This was part of it. And through our own channels, our earned channels, and our paid channels, we all were kind of singing the same tune. This is the first time we had ever done this in the history of ETC, working all towards one metric, one goal, one driver.
Ours was a little bit different. In terms of goals, we had a very basic goal of moving the needle. I mean, we knew that there were 100,000 originating passengers. There's data out there. Every time someone buys an airline ticket, every 10th ticket kind of goes into a hopper, and from there you pick up things like average fares and destinations, points of origin and destination and all that. So we had a real good handle on that. And from that, you can also, with origination, note that we had almost a 30% share in the Fredericksburg market without really having done very much. Occasionally a little bit of a parking ad or a radio spot or just doing some PR, just communications. I think that MWA's pretty big. They're very focused on the Washington region, so when there's weather issues up there, they're talking to DC media, and we were quite happy to reach out to little WFLS and the Freelance Star and help them out as that went too. But because we knew what the number was, we didn't set a hard number. Okay, we were almost at 30, we want to get to 35 or 40%. But when this originated, and the concept of this was happening probably April and May of 2014, we had just had 1 or 2 months of consecutive growth on traffic. And we wanted, of course, to grow that. And the peripheral markets for us is an easy way. We know that a certain amount of people who live in Richmond are going to drive up to Dulles because they catch that nonstop to Europe, or maybe a nonstop to the West Coast. They ignore that 2-hour connection or 2.5-hour connection on I-95, but they'll make the trip. But Fredericksburg, again, just because of their position. So that was, we are going to move the needle. We'll be able to track market share. And then just to be able to just, in addition to running the campaign and the online ads and the TV spot like you saw here, how do we track it? And what we did, we incentivized the travelers on that so that there was a parking coupon at the end. So if they followed the course of this and went to SaveTheStress.com And of course, one concern we had is we wanted to really focus this on Fredericksburg, and we do plenty of couponing in Richmond. But this was something that was very specific for Fredericksburg, and we were able to contain that. But we also, at the time, it was kind of a record campaign for us in terms of coupons picked up off of our website and then later redeemed, especially around Thanksgiving, because the eligible period, I think, went just right after that holiday. So kind of Labor Day through Thanksgiving, and more than half of the redemptions happened as we approached the Thanksgiving holiday. Well, we felt pretty good about what we saw. We saw, again, record couponing in terms of a parking program. And then there's other ways to measure it. That same data that we used for airline tickets, MIDT, Marketing Information Data Tapes, it sounds like something from the 50s, but they still use it in the airline industry. We could still pull that, and we could see some market share improvements on that as well. And then part of it too, when you have customers that are not familiar with your product, they ask questions. And there's a lot of ways for them to reach out to the airport. So whether we're catching something off the web or social media comments out there, we were able to do that. And a lot of times you can identify exactly where they're from. So we have felt good about that. And again, when we were conceiving this Save the Stress campaign, we'd only had 1 or 2 months. We'd come off of a terrible January and February where there were record numbers of cancellations. March had happened, it was good. But we're now up to about 18 months of consecutive growth. We'll report that here at the end of the month. It's not all Fredericksburg. Certainly the economic improvement in the region has been helpful to us, but the periphery markets like Fredericksburg, like Charlottesville, like Newport News, and even Southside, just as the economy's picked up, it's certainly been beneficial.
So I think for us, I mean, we definitely hit the goals that we had up front in terms of the number of placements we wanted to receive, but also just for us as a PR team, one of our personal missions and visions for our team is to position CarMax as the leader in the retail space, in the used car expert, so that media will in the future come to us. So I think oftentimes our goals up front, they have like a long-term, it's a long-term investment, a long-term return as well, as we see some of the reporters that we reached out to, start circling back around and asking direct questions about, hey, remember that shopping report you put out? I was just curious, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And this is 4 months later or something. So I think it's definitely, for us, every goal of individual campaigns works up into our goals as a PR team to ensuring that they're really working together and in sync with one another. I think one of our challenges on this campaign was we had so much information. It was how do we really synthesize it down into something that made sense to the general public. And so we did a 30-second video, and then we put it in an infographic form so that we could have really a visual way of outlining some of this information and then breaking it down into certain segments to provide on social media outlets as well. So for us, it was really, the challenge was, with all of this information, how do you synthesize it down into something that actually means something and is going to resonate with the public, and then put it into a visually appealing way for them. So for that, we needed internal buy-in from we have a huge broadcast team, and then we have a design and development team. We actually outsourced this infographic and worked with a third party on this. So obviously for smaller organizations, funding challenges can be a problem with that, but all of these things kind of together were helpful in crafting what this would actually look like from a visual perspective.
I think our challenge was just getting them here, and a big part of that was they started in LA, they were going to Austin, they were going to Chicago, they were going to New Orleans, New York City. Where does Richmond, Virginia fit in on that? So we really had to sell Virginia to them and sell our chefs and our restaurants and our wineries as these are premier destinations for you to come. And most people aren't going to think about Virginia when they think about a culinary destination in the US, especially an international audience. When most people coming from England, they probably think of New York and LA and maybe Austin or New Orleans, but we weren't really on the map for them. So making our case was definitely a challenge, but we did it, so that we overcame. And then in terms of our team's investment, it was really all hands on deck. And as Casey mentioned earlier, really breaking down silos has become a huge bottom line for us, and all of us working together and singing the same tune. So we had our digital team was doing blog posts about it. They were tweeting, Facebook, Instagram, trying to get their attention. We had, I sent out a news release that we were inviting the stars of Assorted Food to come, and actually got some local pickup here. We had our paid team, they were sending out our paid videos to them and trying to show them what we had to offer here, and that's some of our most beautiful photography and videography is in those. But we really had all hands on deck, and then working with our partners across the state as well. So it was a lot of time, and I was up many late nights putting together itineraries for them and shifting things around with their schedules, but it was definitely worth it.
I think we were fortunate in terms of challenges. I'd hear the internal buy-in. This is one that kind of started at the top. Because we had the data, because we know the travelers were there, we've had support for a long time for peripheral market efforts from the commission, from the CEO, so that really wasn't a hurdle. So, and we've got identified partners when we look to develop campaigns and place things and do the creative on that. And so that was all kind of in place. I think one big concern that we had, though, was this is something where we wanted to try to keep it so tight so it really felt like a good test of Fredericksburg. And there was one instance where, with all the geo-targeting and all the smart people behind it, where we actually saw it slip. And I'm on Kayak one day, and I'm just looking for, that's how I search for flights. The little banner says it gives you two check boxes, either drive up I-95 to DC or Baltimore airport, or pet an angry badger. In each case, the pet an angry badger was the one actually checked. And then it gave you an option, check, and for free parking, click here and all. And anyway, so this popped up, and here I'm sitting in, eastern Henrico County getting a Fredericksburg ad served to me. And I couldn't get on the phone any faster. But anyways, that I think that was the only one. We had no redemptions that I'm aware of outside of that market. So that was one. Of the other one was like, okay, you can pay for things, but what can we go out? Because we have worked with the Freelance Star and WFLS, and we've been a member of the chamber up in Fredericksburg forever. Can we get some mileage out of that? It's just beneficial to both parties. We found that these were actually very, very good partners. Well, in terms of general mission, I'll go ahead.
Sure.
The airport, we see ourselves as an economic driver for the region. We aspire to be the airport of choice for the Mid-Atlantic. And so when you're at an area like Fredericksburg, which is absolutely up for grabs, again, there's not an airport in that town or nearby that town, then it seems like it's important. In fact, I think we even got a thank you note from VDOT at one point. I think it was unofficial, but if we're taking a few cars off of that northern stretch between Fredericksburg and DC, we were doing favors to a lot of folks. But so it tied very directly into what we want to do at the airport. And again, this was focused on a market that didn't have an airport, so we weren't going clearly into someone's backyard. We have tested, we have done some advertising in some other markets that do have some service, but this was a real focus in this particular case.
Our mission at VTC is to get more people coming to Virginia to stay longer and spend more money. And it's pretty simple. But the way we do that is everything is based on really careful research, and we've decided that everything we need to do falls into our 10 drivers, whether it's outdoors, beach, culinary, wine. So this really fit into what we do for our culinary driving campaign, and across the board from our paid, earned, and owned channels, this was something that we were all on board with, and it just fit in naturally with what we've been doing. So.
Yeah, ours. CarMax as a whole has its goals and its mission statement, but for us as a PR team, it's very specific to positioning CarMax as the leader and the trusted advisor in automotive retailing. And so this was kind of the perfect opportunity for us to say, we know what consumers want the most, and because we're the biggest and we have this incredible insight that nobody else does. So it was really a perfect fit.
Five or 10 years ago, no one was talking about Twitter and Facebook and that sort of thing. So this certainly has been important elements. I remember in the past at an airport, and before I was in Richmond, I was in a smaller market in Texas, where your campaign could be a couple of billboards. I mean, you go to Love Field in Dallas, and Southwest actually owns the media in some spot, but they would have Albuquerque here, and they would have El Paso there, and New Orleans there, and so that was their campaign, and that wasn't uncommon. But this particular campaign, you saw the TV spot, that mostly ran on cable up in the area. I think there's one network affiliate actually in Fredericksburg. So that's where the TV hit, but we did print, Freelance Star, we did some sponsored stuff on radio, promoted tweets, we did a little bit on Facebook, and then we were doing ad placement, working with a media partner. And I think part of it too is just what works and what didn't. Some things that we expected to be real productive weren't. And then some things like, let's put a little bit in here and see what happens, really turned out to be good. Pandora was probably the last place I would look when I'm actually shopping air service, and flights and airports and airlines actually for us turned out to be remarkable in terms of the impressions and the click-throughs, and then actually people going forward and picking up the coupons. So we had some surprises along the way, but these are elements, I mean, more than half of that is stuff that didn't exist a few years ago, so it's on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I just think there's been such an evolution in the marketing communications landscape in the past few years. PR is not really PR anymore, it's social, and digital is not really just digital anymore, it's PR. And I think just understanding what the landscape is and adapting to this new landscape, and your team adapting, I think just being flexible and everyone working together. I think the most important thing for a marketing communications team is breaking down the silos, one, and also not being territorial over your particular skill or whatever that you're covering. So I think working all together and also understanding that things are evolving and changing. And we may have done some banner ads a few years ago, and I just heard at a conference that apparently you're more likely to die in a car crash or plane crash than for someone to click on a banner ad now. So, I mean, things are just... Sorry, not car crash. And not plane crash. Sinking! I mean at a yacht. But I think just staying up to trend with everything and keeping the communications line open with your entire team and all your different disciplines is really important.
I think for me, it's been one of the big frustrating parts is how do you put like a cohesive campaign actually together? And for me, it's just like you don't want to be splattering stuff on the wall, you want it to be all together. And so this time we actually tried something new which we'd never used. It was a capsule, which is, we use a media measurement tool and monitoring tool called Cision. And within Cision, they have this capsule which you can put a video, the infographic, use the capsule and put the capsule on the wire. So it was the first time I tried doing this, and I really liked it. It was really a cool tool. It was really expensive, but it was really, I really liked having it all in one place instead of sending out a press release with multiple attachments and like how do reporters now want to see this? This is a big thing for me, is trying to get into the reporter mind when, with the advent of social media, they're also being flooded, their inboxes and emails. And how do you really get through the noise with some sort of just enticing campaign when there's so much out there in the universe?
Well, the first one for us was kind of funny. We expected it would happen. If you're offering a parking coupon at an airport, everyone will save them till the holiday. They will use it for personal travel, not for business travel. But no, I think a lot of times in this sense, it's back to the basics. I think you have to know what's unique about your product. I think discovering a little pain in the marketplace, like in our case, driving up I-95, and then a solution driving down I-95, is pretty basic. And then as far as working through the clutter and putting the word free and parking in an airport, that's how we did it. We worked through the clutter because there was some value to the user at the end of the day.
I think the biggest takeaway for us, well, two of them. One, nagging works. And two, I think this was a really big eye-opener for us, showing how much influence that influencers and bloggers have. These people on YouTube now, I mean, it's insane. They've got millions of followers on YouTube for these people that are just doing it out of their homes, and they've got such an incredible impact on their audience. Their audience is very loyal to what they have to say. They trust them. So I think as we move forward, we're going to be really targeting bloggers and influencers much more than paid media and even press releases going forward. I think having someone that has an audience that they already have people that trust them, going out and spreading our word and our messaging, I think that's going to be a really powerful tool for us going forward.
I think I would say 2 points. Figure out what you have to say that's unique in the marketplace that maybe nobody else is saying. Or if you don't have anything really unique, figure out a unique way to actually say what everybody else is saying.
Spin back.
Yeah. And then the second would be don't give up. If it doesn't work the first year, this was the second year that we did this. And every year we kind of learn something different, and I look at this campaign and think about the things that I'm going to do differently next year. And if it doesn't work next year, we're probably not going to do it again. Just because I think it's really easy to throw your hands up after an initial content, I don't want to say failure, but like learning. If you don't actually meet those goals, I think it's more important to actually look at what you can do differently so that you can make those changes next year instead of just scrapping it and putting it aside. Another way I think that's always really important to do is test it and figure out a way, to understand if your message is really going to resonate before you actually put the money into it, and before you put it out into the public. Just make sure what you're actually putting out there before you do anything is you've really thought it through whether it's going to be effective or not.